I'm 81 years old, and there's a name I still hesitate to say out loud because it makes the room feel emptier when I do. I've outlived a lot of things, jobs, houses, arguments, but I didn't outlive that friendship. I lost it while I was still alive. I'm telling this now because there isn't much future left for me to protect. The people who might be hurt by my honesty are mostly gone. What's left is time that feels thinner every year, and the knowledge that silence doesn't preserve anything. It just lets things disappear without being named. These days are quiet, not the peaceful kind people imagine when they talk about old age, but the kind where you notice sounds because there are so few of them. The refrigerator clicking on, a car door somewhere down the street, my own breathing when I sit too long without moving. I wake up earlier than I used to, even though I have nowhere to be. I make coffee I don't finish. I look at my phone knowing it won't ring. There are names in there I could still call, but not his. That number stopped meaning anything a long time ago. We met when I was 28. That feels like another person now, but I remember him clearly. I remember the way he laughed before he made the joke, like his body couldn't wait. I remember how he'd knock instead of ringing the bell, like he didn't want to startle anyone. He showed up the first time with a six-pack and no plan, and somehow that became our rhythm. Back then, everything felt open. Not easy exactly, but open. We both worked long hours. I was already building what I thought was a serious life. He was, too, in his own way. We talked about work the way people do when they think it's temporary, like it's just something you pass through on your way to living. We didn't talk about feelings, we talked about days, about small annoyances, about what we were going to eat. We talked around things which felt safe, it felt sufficient. The friendship didn't announce itself. It grew the way most real things do, by repetition. Same bar on Thursdays, same walk on Sunday mornings, same jokes that got worse every year and still made us laugh because they were ours. When I look back, I don't see a single moment where I chose wrong. That's the part that still confuses me. I see 1,000 small moments where I chose what made sense. I chose what I'd already chosen before. I chose not to rock anything. He changed first, not all at once, just enough to notice. He started asking questions that didn't have quick answers. He wanted to talk about things that made me uncomfortable, not because they were dramatic, but because they were quiet and close to home. He asked me once if I was happy. I remember shrugging and saying something practical. I said I was busy. I said things were fine. He nodded, but his face didn't change. That should have told me something. At the time, I thought he was restless. I thought this was a phase. People go through phases, and if you don't make a fuss, they pass. That's what I believed. That's how I'd lived my life. Keep your head down, do your part, don't complicate things. He started making different choices. New routines, new people, not in a dramatic way. He didn't leave town or reinvent himself. He just stopped accepting certain things as inevitable. I didn't have language for that then. I just felt irritated. I told myself I was being steady, reliable, the same person I'd always been. I wore that like a badge. I didn't realize steadiness can look a lot like refusal when you're standing still, and the other person is moving. There were conversations I avoided, not because they were explosive, but because they felt like work. He wanted to talk about the way we spoke to each other, about how we spent our time, about things we assumed without checking. I said we'd talk later. Later became a habit. We still saw each other, that's the trick of it. From the outside, nothing looked broken. Same holidays, same birthday calls, same dry humor. But there was a thinning, like fabric wearing down from use. I missed things, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't rearrange. I missed a gallery opening because it was raining and I was tired. I missed a dinner because work ran late and I didn't feel like explaining myself. Each time I told myself there would be another one. He stopped asking as often. There was a stretch of months where we only talked about logistics. Who was bringing what time we were meeting. No checking in, No circling back. It felt efficient. It felt adult. One afternoon, he came by unannounced. That should have mattered more to me than it did. He sat at my kitchen table and looked older somehow, not in his face, but in his posture, like he was holding something heavy and didn't know where to set it down. He said he didn't know how to be friends the way we were anymore. He said he felt lonely even when we were together. He said he needed more honesty, more effort, more presence. I remember feeling accused, even though he didn't accuse me of anything. I remember thinking he was asking too much. I said I was doing my best. I said this was just how I was. That sentence ended us. Not immediately, but it closed the door that might have stayed open if I'd chosen different words, if I'd been curious instead of defensive, if I'd asked what he needed instead of explaining myself. After that, there was space, not silence, but distance. We were polite. We were careful. We were less. Life filled in the gaps, it always does. I had responsibilities, he had his own life. The days kept stacking up and the absence didn't feel urgent. It felt manageable. Then he got sick. Not the dramatic kind at first, just tired. Appointments. A diagnosis that sounded serious but not final. We talked on the phone more then. Short calls, awkward concern. I told myself this was my chance to show up. But I still didn't change. Not really. I showed up the way I knew how, which was controlled and contained. I brought groceries, I made jokes, I didn't ask the questions that might have let something real through. He died on a Tuesday. I remember because I had planned to call him that night. I was going to do it after dinner. I wanted to be in the right headspace. I never made that call. There are things people say when someone dies, about closure, about forgiveness, about how love remains. Some of that is true. But there are also things that end without ceremony, conversations that never happen, apologies that stay hypothetical. I went to his funeral and stood among people who knew parts of him I never did. I realized then how small my version of him had become, how much of his life I'd opted out of without meaning to. What can't be fixed is the fact that he never knew I understood, not fully, not in time. I never told him I was scared of changing because I didn't know who I'd be without my habits. I never told him I admired his courage, even when it made me uncomfortable. Now, when I think of him, I don't think about the end. I think about 1,000 ordinary days where I could have leaned in and didn't, where I chose familiarity over effort, where I assumed endurance was the same as care. If you're listening to this, I'm not asking you to do anything. I don't know your life. I don't know what's possible for you. I only know that waiting feels different when there's no longer anyone on the other side of it. People don't leave all at once. They drift, they quiet down, they stop asking, and if you're not paying attention, you can mistake that for peace. I don't have much time left. I know that. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of how much I left untouched while I was alive. If this meant something to you, sit with it for a moment. You don't have to act. Just notice who you're assuming will always be there. I sit at my table now and drink my coffee while it's still hot. I try to say names out loud even when no one answers. Some losses don't get easier, they just get quieter. This is one of them.